My dad's new girlfriend. Slowly erased my mom's memory from our lives, but I never expected her true, dark intentions to be this dangerous. My mom passed away 5 years ago, and I think of her every day. My dad went through a really bad depression, and I had to take care of myself, basically. During the Christmas holidays, my dad told me that he had been seeing someone for a while. I noticed that he was happier, and I guess I was happy for him. I didn't want him to be lonely forever, but I did feel like my mom was being erased completely. He never wanted to talk about her, and he got rid of all pictures with her in them. He said that his GF will be spending Christmas with us and then moving in. I wasn't happy at all. I don't even know her, but I didn't say anything. I met her on Christmas, and usually my dad and I put the star on the tree that day. We would put the star on the tree and watch The Grinch. It's our tradition, and we kept it even when we were grieving my mom. It's the only tradition from when she was with us that we actually kept. When his girlfriend came over, he put the star on with her while I was in the bathroom. Also, we didn't watch The Grinch because she hates it. I know I sound spoiled and childish, but I was so angry. We've been doing this my whole life, and she just came in and destroyed it. The whole night, she didn't even bother getting to know me at all. She was all over my dad and pretty much ignored me. I told my dad about how upset I was about our tradition, and he said I should grow up and that things change. I didn't like her because she gave me a bad feeling, so I never got close to her. She complained to my dad about it, and he got mad at me for not making her feel welcomed. I felt bad because she makes my dad really happy, so I tried being more friendly with her. In front of my dad, she was nice to me, but when we were alone, she ignored me or spoke to me with attitude. She even told me that I was a brat and I make my dad's life harder. I told him, but he didn't believe me and yelled at me for trying to sabotage his relationship. He said that I wanted him to die alone and be sad, and that I was selfish. I was so shocked because none of it is true. My dad basically treated me like I wasn't there at all after that. I felt like I did when my mom died. All alone. I stayed up really late one night because I just couldn't sleep and wanted to sneak in a midnight snack. The GF was in the kitchen on FaceTime, so I decided to be nosy and listen. She was talking about my dad and how much she loves him. Then she said that he had this dumb daughter, and she wondered if it was too late for adoption. Her and her friend laughed at that. She said that I was a little bitch and she hated me. Her friend then said something about boarding school or military school, but I left, so I didn't hear the rest. I was so exhausted from all the crying I did, so I actually slept. I didn't tell my dad, and I don't even know if I should since he probably won't believe me. I really miss my mom. I kind of want to go live with my grandparents, mom's parents now, but I don't want my dad to think that I'm leaving him. What do I do? Can I even do anything? How do I get my dad to listen to me? Would I be wrong for leaving? Update 1. Thanks for all the advice and support on my original post. Honestly, I wasn't sure if anyone would care, but reading through your comments made me feel less alone in all this, so I really appreciate that. So, a few things have happened since I last posted. I took some of your advice and tried to keep my distance from my dad's girlfriend. Let's call her Lisa. But, of course, things couldn't stay that simple. My dad's been trying to push us to spend more time together, even suggesting a girls' night. Yep, you read that right. A girls' night. Like we're going to braid each other's hair and spill secrets about our crushes or something. It was beyond uncomfortable, but I went along with it because, at this point, I just don't want to rock the boat any more than I already have. Lisa suggested we go out shopping together. I could already tell she wasn't thrilled by the idea, but I agreed for my dad's sake. The entire time, she was making passive-aggressive comments like, "Oh, I wish I had your metabolism at your age," or, "Your dad really spoils you, doesn't he?" Which is ironic because I'm pretty sure she's the one reaping the benefits of my dad's wallet right now. I kept my mouth shut, but it just solidified everything I already felt about her. After that shopping trip, my dad was beaming, thinking we'd had some huge bonding moment. He even gave me this hopeful look like, "See, it's all working out." And I hated that I was lying to him by pretending everything was fine. I still didn't tell him about the FaceTime call I overheard because, honestly, what's the point? He's so wrapped around her finger, he probably wouldn't believe me. Or worse, he'd just accuse me of trying to break them up again. But things got weirder. Last night, my dad told me he's planning to propose to Lisa. Yes, propose. He dropped this bomb on me casually, like it was no big deal, while we were having dinner. I nearly choked on my food. I couldn't even speak for a solid minute. He went on about how he hasn't been this happy in years, how he thinks Lisa's the one, and how he wants my blessing. I didn't know what to say. It felt like I was being hit with a truck. I just nodded because, honestly, what could I say? My mom's been gone for 5 years, but I never thought my dad would replace her. I guess I never really dealt with it, and now I'm being forced to face it all at once. Later that night, I cried in my room for what felt like hours. I miss my mom more than ever, and I hate that it feels like she's being erased. The worst part is that Lisa's not just some neutral replacement. She's a woman who actively despises me. I overheard her say she wanted me gone, and now I'm expected to accept her as some kind of stepmom? It feels surreal and unfair. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get more messed up, I found something. I wasn't snooping, I swear. My dad left his phone on the coffee table while he was showering, and a message from Lisa popped up. It said, "Don't worry about her. Once the papers are signed, she'll have no say." I have no idea what that means, but it's sending off all kinds of alarm bells in my head. What papers? What does she mean I won't have a say? I'm freaking out. Is this about the proposal? Some kind of prenup? Or something worse? I feel like I'm spiraling. I don't know if I should confront my dad about this or if I'm just overthinking everything because I'm emotional. I don't want to make things worse, but I also can't shake the feeling that something's not right. I'm seriously considering going to my grandparents' house, at least for a while, just to clear my head and get some space. But I don't want to leave my dad behind, especially if Lisa's trying to manipulate him. I just don't know what to do. Has anyone been through something like this? How do I even begin to approach this? Would I be wrong for just leaving? Update 2. I didn't expect so many of you to respond to my last post. Thank you for all the advice and encouragement. It really made me feel like I'm not crazy in all of this. A lot has happened, and to be honest, it's taken a turn I didn't expect. So here's the deal. After that weird text I saw on my dad's phone, I couldn't stop thinking about what papers she was talking about. I spent days going back and forth in my head. Should I ask my dad? Should I just leave it alone? I was losing sleep over it. But then something happened that forced my hand. One evening, my dad was out running errands, and Lisa was home. I was in my room minding my own business when she knocked on my door, which she never does. She had this weird smile on her face that immediately made me uneasy. She walked in and said we needed to talk. She sat down on my bed and started talking about how much she loved my dad and how excited she was to become a family. But then, her tone shifted. She said something like, "Look, I know you and I aren't exactly close, and that's fine. But once your dad and I are married, things are going to change around here." I asked her what she meant, and she said, "Well, you're going to have to start pulling your weight. You're not a little girl anymore. It's time you think about what your future looks like." I was honestly confused, so I asked her to clarify. That's when she dropped the bomb. She said she and my dad were discussing sending me to a boarding school program after they got married. Something about helping me become more independent and find myself. But what she was really saying was that they didn't want me around. She said it was best for everyone if I wasn't living at home anymore, that it would help me grow up. I was stunned. I asked her if my dad really agreed to this, and she shrugged like it was no big deal. She said something like, "He knows it's for the best. He just doesn't know how to tell you yet." That was the final straw for me. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I got up and locked myself in the bathroom because I was on the verge of a panic attack. I just kept thinking, this woman is trying to get rid of me. After I calmed down, I texted my grandparents and asked if I could stay with them for a while. I didn't explain everything over text, but they said I was always welcome. So I made the decision. I'm leaving. I packed up my stuff while Lisa was still downstairs, and I didn't say a word to her. I waited until my dad got home. When he walked in, I told him everything. I told him about the FaceTime call, the texts, and how Lisa had just tried to tell me I was being shipped off to boarding school. I was crying at this point because I was so angry and hurt. But you know what he did? He just stood there. He didn't yell, didn't defend me, didn't even look surprised. He just sighed and said, "I think it's time you learned how to stand on your own 2 feet. You're growing up and things have to change." I was speechless. I realized in that moment that my dad had already chosen Lisa over me. He wasn't going to stand up for me. He wasn't going to fight for me. He didn't care how much I was hurting. All he cared about was keeping her happy. So I told him I was leaving. I said I was going to stay with my grandparents and I didn't know when I'd be back. He didn't even try to stop me. He just said, "If that's what you think is best." I packed up the rest of my things and left that night. I'm staying at my grandparents' house now, and it's been a huge relief. They've been so supportive and have listened to everything. They even said I could stay as long as I needed, which is a huge weight off my shoulders. I haven't spoken to my dad since I left. He hasn't reached out either, which honestly hurts more than I expected. But at the same time, I think I made the right choice. I couldn't stay in that house with Lisa trying to push me out and my dad not caring enough to stop her. I'm still trying to process everything. I don't know what the future looks like right now, but at least I'm in a place where I feel safe and supported. I just wish things didn't have to end up like this. Update 3. It's been a few weeks since I last posted, and I have a major update that I honestly didn't see coming. After leaving my dad's house and staying with my grandparents, I've had a lot of time to think things through. I was still hurt and confused, but being away from that toxic environment helped me clear my head. I didn't plan on talking to my dad anytime soon, but something happened that changed everything. A few days ago, I got a call from one of my dad's close friends, Mike. Mike's been around since I was a kid, and he was always close with both my mom and dad. He said he wanted to talk to me about something important, so I agreed to meet up with him. When we met, he looked really serious, which immediately made me nervous. He started by saying he had no idea things were this bad between me and my dad, and that he was really sorry for everything I've been going through. Then, he told me something that shook me to my core. Apparently, Lisa isn't who she says she is. Mike did some digging after he noticed some red flags about her, mainly how quickly she moved in with my dad and how she seemed to be isolating him from everyone else in his life. He found out that Lisa has a history of scamming older men. She's done this before, met men who were grieving or vulnerable, got close to them, and then manipulated them into giving her control over their finances. Mike said he tried to warn my dad, but my dad wouldn't listen. He's completely blinded by Lisa and refuses to see the truth. But it gets worse. Apparently, the papers Lisa was talking about in that text message I saw, they're part of a legal document giving her power of attorney over my dad's estate. She's been pushing him to sign over control of his finances and property to her, and my dad's been going along with it because he trusts her completely. Mike said that Lisa probably sees me as a threat because, as his daughter, I'm the rightful heir to anything my dad owns. That's why she's been trying to push me out, so she can have full control without me in the picture. Hearing all of this made me feel sick. It all started to make sense. Why she was so cold to me, why she was trying to get rid of me, and why my dad has been acting so out of character. I don't even know how to process it all. Mike told me he's planning to confront my dad again and try to get him to see reason. He's also advised me to talk to a lawyer to protect myself, just in case Lisa manages to manipulate my dad into signing those papers. I haven't spoken to my dad yet, but after hearing everything from Mike, I realized that I have no choice. I need to protect him, even if he doesn't want my help right now. I don't know how he'll react when I confront him, especially after everything that's happened between us, but I can't sit back and let Lisa ruin his life. After my conversation with Mike, I spent the next few days trying to figure out my next move. I talked to my grandparents about everything, and they were just as shocked as I was. My grandpa was furious, saying he always had a bad feeling about Lisa. My grandma, on the other hand, was more worried about me and how I was holding up. They offered to support me in any way they could, whether that was helping me find a lawyer or even coming with me when I confronted my dad. I ended up taking Mike's advice and spoke to a lawyer. I didn't know if I was overreacting or being paranoid, but after explaining the situation, the lawyer didn't think so at all. She said that what Lisa was trying to do was classic manipulation and financial abuse. Apparently, cases like this happen more often than you'd think. People prey on those who are grieving or vulnerable, and they slowly chip away at their support systems until they have full control. The lawyer said she'd help me draft a letter outlining my concerns and advising my dad against signing any documents giving Lisa control of his assets. I also decided to do something else before I confronted my dad. I went through all of the messages I'd exchanged with him since Lisa came into the picture. I wanted to see if there were any other clues that I might have missed, anything that might help me understand how things had gotten this bad. That's when I found something that made my heart sink. There was a text from Lisa to my dad, forwarded to me by mistake about 6 months ago. It was from when they were just starting to date, and I had totally forgotten about it. The text was a short message about how my dad deserved happiness and how I would eventually come around, but there was a small detail that I hadn't noticed before. At the very bottom of the message, there was a name mentioned, a first name not Lisa's, but something completely different. Melissa. And I thought it was a typo at first, but now, after everything I'd learned, I started to wonder. Could Lisa have been using a different name? Was she hiding her real identity from my dad? I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I mentioned it to Mike, and he agreed that it was worth looking into. He said he'd keep digging and see if he could find any records of a Melissa associated with the scams Lisa had pulled in the past. Armed with all of this information, I finally decided to confront my dad. I was terrified, to be honest. This wasn't just about my feelings anymore. This was about potentially saving my dad from a dangerous situation. I rehearsed what I was going to say over and over again, trying to find the right words to make him listen. I called him and asked if we could meet up somewhere neutral, just the two of us. I didn't want to have this conversation at the house, especially not with Lisa around. My dad agreed, sounding a little confused but not resistant. We ended up meeting at a coffee shop not far from his place, and I could tell right away that he was already defensive. It was like he knew this conversation wasn't going to go the way he wanted. I started off by telling him how much I loved him and how much I missed the relationship we used to have. I didn't want to come in guns blazing and risk him shutting down before I could get to the important part. I told him that I understood he was happy with Lisa and that I wasn't trying to take that away from him, but that I had serious concerns about her intentions. That's when I laid it all out. I told him about what I overheard on FaceTime, about the text messages, and about what Mike had found out. I told him about Lisa's history of scamming men like him and how she was trying to isolate him from the people who cared about him, including me. I also told him about the lawyer's advice, explaining how dangerous it could be if he signed those papers giving Lisa control of his finances. At first, my dad just sat there staring at his coffee. He didn't say anything for what felt like forever. My heart was pounding, and I was sure he was about to yell at me, accuse me of lying again, or just walk out. But then he finally spoke. "I don't know what to believe anymore," he said quietly. "I thought she was helping me move on, helping me get my life back together. But now, I don't know." I could see the confusion and hurt on his face, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally getting through to him. I told him that I wasn't asking him to leave Lisa right away or make any rash decisions, but that he needed to take a step back and really think about everything. I asked him to delay signing any papers, at least until we could figure out more about Lisa's past. He didn't give me a clear answer that day, but he promised he'd think about it. That was more than I expected, to be honest. I left the coffee shop feeling a strange mix of relief and anxiety. I knew there was still a long way to go, but at least he was listening now. A couple of days later, Mike called me with some big news. He had managed to track down more information about Lisa, or rather, Melissa. Turns out, Lisa's real name was Melissa, and she had a string of ex-husbands, all of whom had similar stories. She would swoop in, act like the perfect partner, then slowly take control of their finances before disappearing with a large chunk of their assets. None of the men had been able to prove anything illegal because she always covered her tracks well, but there were enough similarities to make it clear that this was her MO. Mike and I decided it was time to present all of this to my dad. We gathered the evidence we had, screenshots of the ex-husband's stories, the text messages, and even the information Mike found about her previous scams. It wasn't easy, but we managed to get my dad to agree to sit down with us. When we showed him everything, my dad was visibly shaken. He kept shaking his head, saying he couldn't believe it, that it didn't make sense. But the more we laid out the facts, the more I could see reality setting in for him. He wasn't angry, just heartbroken. He had genuinely thought Lisa was the one who would help him move on from the loss of my mom, and now he was realizing that she was just using him. It was a long, emotional conversation, but by the end of it, my dad agreed not to sign any papers and to take a break from Lisa. He said he needed time to process everything, and I told him that I'd be there for him every step of the way. For the first time in a long time, I felt like my dad and I were on the same side again. It's going to take time to heal from all of this, but at least we're starting to rebuild our relationship. I don't know what's going to happen with Lisa. She still doesn't know that we're onto her, but I'm hoping that my dad can finally see her for who she really is. I'm just grateful that Mike was there to help, and that I didn't give up on my dad, even when things seemed hopeless. I still miss my mom every day, but I know she'd be proud of me for standing up for myself and for my dad. I'll keep you guys posted if anything else happens, but for now, I'm just focusing on taking things one day at a time and rebuilding the life that Lisa almost destroyed. Thanks again for all your support. I don't think I would have had the strength to do any of this without the advice and encouragement I got from you all.